Why is it that some people feel this deep loneliness inside their heart and in search of the meaning of life and in search of that missing puzzle in their heart? There's something that is missing. They wander off, their souls, they wander off looking for that missing puzzle. And your soul tries to find that missing puzzle in music, in cigarettes, in drugs, in sexual pleasures, in overeating, or maybe even oversleeping. All of these things, that which corrupt the heart. So if these are the things that corrupt the heart, this poses a question: what is the fix for this? What can we do to cleanse our heart? What can we do to eliminate these things and then build a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? To understand the process of building a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we first have to understand the word Salah, because what better way is there to build a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala other than namaz, other than Salah? So first we need to understand the word Salah. In Arabic, the word Salah comes from the word Salat, and the direct translation of that word into English turns out to be link or communication. Yeah, so communication or link. Communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and a link with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first thing that comes to our mind is our link with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala good? Is our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala good? Or is there a blockade? Is there a blockage in the way? Is there something that is keeping us from accessing the reward that Allah is ready to give at all times? To build this connection, to beautify our salah, to take it to the level of the Sahaba's salah, we need to acknowledge a few things. And before I get into that, I need to read to you or narrate to you a quote of Imam Ibn Qayyim radiallahu anhu. He says, "In the heart of every human being, there is a sense of scattering which can only be gathered. A sense of scattering which can only be gathered when you turn to Allah. And in the heart, there is a sense of loneliness which can only be overcome by the feeling of the innate nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in solitude. And in the heart, there is a sadness which can only be removed by the joy of knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being true to Him in worship." Now, the last statement here is very, very powerful. It's extremely powerful. What does being true in worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mean? And the answer to that is, we cannot really worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unless we know Him. It is for a reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us Asma'ul Husna, 99 beautiful names. Those names are the characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Through them, through those names, Allah wants us to know Him, because those essentially are the characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You cannot worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and without knowing Him, right? Because what is ibadah essentially? Ibadat comes after love, after ishq, after sababa, desire. When there's a desire and there's a love, then is when you prostrate. And we prostrate in front of Allah without knowing Him, without loving Him. So how do we love Him? We know about Him through His names. We read about His names. And a beautiful, beautiful series for that is A Life with Allah by Sheikh Ali Hamouda. It is an outstanding review on the names of Asma al-Husna, on the names of Allah, the 99 beautiful names. And he highlights some of the names, and it is absolutely beautiful. Now, I want to conclude with this statement. when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Quran that He is closer to us than our jugular vein. He is closer to us than our jugular vein. We feel this deep loneliness, and so we go for sins. We tend to follow our desires because we think that is something that is going to bring us that, that missing piece is going to come from all of the things that I mentioned earlier which corrupt the heart. But when you acknowledge some of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like Al-Basir, the all-seeing, and As-Sami', the all-hearing, you realize that there is someone always there with you in public and in private when you're about to commit a sin, who is watching, who is hearing at all times. How less of a window that leaves us to commit sin. If you think that somebody is always watching you, that somebody's recording you 24/7, then how difficult would it become to sin? And after knowing all of this, you are still persistent on committing sin, then my brothers and sisters, your shyness of Allah is too little. You must learn about Him. You must learn about His names. And then you focus and you direct all of that knowledge into your salah, and in that connection you perfect it. And then through that you elevate your salah in levels, in khushu', in khashiyah, and you have raja, you have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He will heal your heart. That He will heal your heart. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to make this dua in between the two sajdas. And you see the word ujburni, which means to heal my breakages, to fix my breakages. And so you come into salah and you ask Allah Ta'ala to fix your breakages and to fix your heart, your broken heart. And my brothers and sisters, I would like you to hold this thought until the next episode.